Samsung's new Galaxy A17 might just look like just another budget smartphone, but with its super smooth AMOLED display, a 50 megapixel main camera with OIS, and surprisingly solid performance, it could be one of the cheapest, best phones of 2025. Let's see if that's really the case. The Samsung A17 packs an in-house Exynos 1330 chipset alongside 4GB of RAM, 128GB of storage. You also get the option of an SD card slot here, which pushes it up to 1TB of additional storage, which is awesome. Now, in terms of performance, there's some things we have to touch on quickly before we get into more detail, and that is the chipset. That Exynos 1330 is the exact same chipset found in the A16. In fact, spec-wise, throughout this entire review, every single thing you're seeing here is an exact carbon copy in all areas of the A16 in the A17 minus one very, very small addition. But how does it perform? In terms of its performance, the Exynos 1330 performance, well, as you'd expect, reasonably well, bang in that budget area. If you're using the phone to just navigate things like the OS, etc., transitioning between apps, it performs reasonably well. But when it comes to more demanding tasks like gaming, for example, don't expect any way possible for you to get any high-performing gaming. If you use Call of Duty Mobile, you only get low to medium settings, and for everything else, you're looking at purely casual games, things like Mario Kart, Mario Run, for example, Subway Surfers, all of those work really well, and they look really, really good, primarily because of the AMOLED display, but primarily because they are less demanding GPU wise than those other games. So the chipset in the A17 is befitting of a phone that is within that budget category. However, the display, which is pretty vibrant and AMOLED, isn't. It fits probably a more expensive phone. In fact, let's break down some of the key specs here. You get a 6.7-inch Super AMOLED display at 90Hz with 800 nits of peak brightness and 86% screen to body ratio. So that is an FHD plus resolution. So if you're watching content on here at any point, what you're gonna get is a super great detailed experience. The colors will pop, they look super rich and vibrant. HDR content again will look really, really good, and you're still benefiting from the rich, deep blacks that you would get on any AMOLED display. And at 90Hz, when you're navigating things like browsing online, scrolling through articles or the menus within the phone itself, again, it looks really, really good. There is one provision here though, and two things actually I would say. One is the design of the cutout for the front sensor of the camera is still the old U-shaped layout that's been there for absolutely ages, and again mirrors the A16. And then the bottom of the phone, you do get a pretty chunky chin. But then when you compare it to phones like the Honor 400 Lite, that has a similar size display, has a punch hole cutout, and has super slim borders when compared to the A17, and I believe it has a 120Hz display as well. So that phone offers just a little bit more display-wise than the A17. The lenses on the back of the A17 are triple, and they make up a 50 megapixel main sensor with OIS, 5 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro. Now that 50 megapixel OIS and that OIS bit is the only difference between this and the A16, but how does that 50 megapixel camera perform? Well, it performs reasonably well in images with the right amount of detail, and as expected from Samsung phones, you do get super contrasty images, which are in fact sharp when taken in good lighting. In terms of video, you're getting 1080p 30fps, so no 4K images here, but that 1080p image does look really good. And then the ultra wide 5 megapixel, fairly low in resolution, so what you're going to have here is a flat, undetailed looking image on that ultra wide, and then that 2 megapixel macro essentially is there just to make up numbers. I wouldn't depend on that 2 megapixel macro to give you any really great output when it comes to its cameras and its quality. Overall, the camera system on the A17 is good. If you stick to the main 50 megapixel lens on the back of the phone, you're going to get pretty good, sharp, detailed images, which are super usable. The ultra wide and the macro I'd probably avoid at all costs if you don't want to lose out on that detail. So the A17 is a super budget price phone, and it costs around about £199, euros or dollars, depending on where you are, minus any promotions. And before we give you our final thoughts on this, and some other bits as well. A couple of things you want to touch on. You get 6 OS updates on here as well, which is sick. And you get a 5000 mAh battery with 25 watts of wired charging. Funnily enough, those last two components are exactly the same as what you find on the S25 Edge, which costs about 6 times as much. So mega lols on a Samsung phone doesn't make any sense. But what I would say, two things that we want to highlight. If you're looking to spend around about £200, euros or dollars on a new smartphone, and that's your budget as a maximum, roughly around that number, then I would probably look at something like the Honor 400 Lite. In its totality, you're going to get a bigger battery, faster charging, a better overall main lens because that's 108 megapixels, and you get a better overall design, look and display as well on the Honor 400 Lite. So that is probably going to be the better phone. If you don't mind punching just that little bit more, say closer to 225, 230, then you can get a CMF Phone 2 Pro. Now that phone will have an even better camera system because it has dual 50 megapixel sensors, faster charging than the A17, bigger battery than the A17, and then has a more robust design and actually just is a better overall phone. But if you're one of those people who has to have a budget smartphone and it has to be Samsung, then definitely something like the A17 is worth considering. Personally, if it's our money, I would save it and spend it on either the 400 Lite or the CMF Phone 2 Pro. But let us know in the comment section your thoughts on the A17 or the 400 Lite or the CMF Phone 2 Pro or any other phone you think sits within that category that we haven't mentioned in this review. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe. Until the next one, as always, we out.